I have to see if I can get the earbuds working because I'm in the dealer's room at Balticon.
All right.
Well, there's no better place to be than Balticon.
Oh, it's a great convention. It's a great convention.
And, is it down on the waterfront?
Yeah. I can look out the window on one side and see the Constellation, the big sailing ship, and look out the window on the other side and see the local shootout. So,
hey, walk up into that local shootout area and go to that market that's up there.
I haven't been out of the hotel yet. I have not been out of the hotel yet.
I love Baltimore, man. I used to hang out there all the time. I love Baltimore. I used to live up there. So,
hey, so I can see a Baltimore day coming. All right.
Hey, are we live? Yeah, all right. I'm sure
welcome to Beat Cube Sunday morning. We have with us a man. Did you really drive cross country to get there? I don't know if he did or not, but he'll tell me when he gets
I'm trying to get my earbuds connected.
David doesn't fly, so I'm sure he drove.
Hey, that's a fun place. But anyway, I got with us on this great weekend Jim Wright, the one, the only, the picture taker. And I got and then also we have David Gerrold, who's just saw a post out on him. From him, I think. It was no, I was in the post office, so it was on you. But with 3 new things from David Gerrold out there. So go look him up on Facebook and see what it's doing. So, as we sit here, and David is off in Baltimore, I will tell you, Jim, you say you used to live there? I loved Baltimore.
Well, I lived in Washington D.C. or just outside of Washington D.C. and then I spent most of my I worked for an agency that's off MD 32, right between off the Washington Baltimore Parkway, so the BWI Parkway, and so I spent a lot of time in that area.
It is cool. Did you go out there to the USS Constitution and look it over?
Oh yeah. I mean, I spent some time there when I was on active duty.
Oh, that was a Jim question. You haven't been out of the hotel yet, David. That's okay.
Yeah. Well, David's looking at the Constellation, so that's different than the Constitution. The Constitution is still a commission. The Constellation is a museum. So, but they're the same. They were built. They were original. They were 2 of the original 6 frigates built by the original United States Navy. That's who they were. The original 6 U.S. frigates, and Constitution, of course, is still in commission. But Constellation, which was one of her sister ships, is now a museum. They're right in Baltimore Harbor. So definitely check it out if you get up there. It's great. I really enjoy it.
I went down in the berthing compartment. Holy crap!
The gun deck, yeah. Oh yeah. Some of the wood, in fact, some of the pens that I sell are made from live oak, which is harvested here. In fact, about 10 miles from me is the U.S. Navy live oak reserve. There's not a lot of live oaks left there. They're still here in Georgia and somewhere on the East Coast. But that live oak is what was used to build a lot of the interior bracing of those vessels. And one of the reasons they were called, the Constitution was called the Old Ironsides, because that oak was so dense that cannonballs bounced off it. And so, if you ever get a chance to visit naval live oaks, it's always worthwhile. Some of those trees are hundreds of years old. They date back to the founding of the country.
Well, I forgot to turn on the chat. Holy cow!
Yeah,
they're busy on us this morning.
I have got the earbuds working, so I can hear you perfectly.
All righty.
All right. Now we got David. All right, so we're good. We're done monkeying around. All right, we're there.
Hey,
yeah. And there's the
this
chat rolling
is a
up on
great
my screen.
convention.
Okay.
This is a great convention. I am really impressed with the friendliness and the intelligence and the overall generosity. They've been taking very good care of all their guests, and it's the kind of thing is I'd love to get used to it, but that'll just make me arrogant as hell. So I'm trying not to get used to it and being treated so well.
We don't want David any more full of himself. That's for damn sure.
Well, I just wrote that on Facebook that writing is arrogant. We're putting our words on shredded bodies of murdered trees. It doesn't get much more arrogant than before.
Sure,
we get into
there has to be a certain.
Text me or email me your address so I can make my travel plans so I can come down and annoy you a couple days.
We're ready. Guest room's ready for you.
Okay, I got to ask
I have
one
to
question.
figure out the travel plans.
Is Florida ready to have David Gerrold and Jim Wright walking the streets?
I don't know how
Critical
much
mass,
street walking
definitely
is going to be
critical
doing there, buddy, but we were here before to get. David was here just last month or the month before the Pensacon.
Pensacon.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. Consider some of the people that are considering some of the people that are walking the streets here in Florida. I think David and I will be flying.
I don't think I'll earn any money street walking in Florida. Although you never know the people everywhere.
I swear. Okay. So
all right.
What's on your mind this week, guys?
You're just going to throw it out there free for all and not give us a subject? Is that what you're going to do?
Okay, well, I can give you a subject. Right now, I can tell you this.
I know where we're going.
If I hear somebody say, let's have a minute of silence for the victims, I'm going to want to stand up and scream, no more freaking
A scream of
silence.
outrage. I'll give you a fucking scream of outrage. I will not give you a minute of silence.
Silence,
my son,
prayer, none of this shit has done a damn thing for any of us. Yeah. And it sure as hell hasn't done anything for the kids that died this week or the ones that died last week. As a matter of fact, it's goddamn ironic for a bunch of Republicans to be talking about a moment of fucking silence when the head of the Republican Party had a rally last night where he read the names of the murdered children and rang a bell and then did a fucking dance to the village people afterwards. Don't tell me it's silent, because that's not
the Republicans have been silent on this issue every chance they get. They've had their moment of silence. It's up to the rest of us to stop being silent and tell them no fucking more. We should have stopped this after Sandy Hook. We should have stopped this before Sandy Hook. It's like, and one of I forget which one, said something to the equivalent of, it's terrible, but what can you do? And my attitude is resign and let someone else in there who can do something.
Fucking anything. How about let's try something? What can you do? I don't know. Nothing doesn't seem to be working. Let's try anything, man. Because literally, the entire, and it's not, and I give you, and I hate this both sides or some shit. But in this case, it is. It's fucking Congress. It's the fucking White House, and not just this White House. When I say this, I mean since Columbine. I mean for the last 50 goddamn years. I mean since Reagan was shot in the fucking head. All right. Well, not in the head, but that was Brady. But anyway, the bottom line here is we have done absolutely nothing for 50 years, and it doesn't seem to be goddamn working. Maybe we should try something. Anything. Yeah. I don't know.
Well,
don't mix words, Jim. Tell us what you're really thinking. We had an assault weapon. We had an assault weapons ban. We had an assault weapons ban, and it worked. And then in 2004, the Republicans led it, and the death rate went up 250%.
Right. And again, this goes around and around. And again, I said this, if you're following me on Twitter, you saw me say this morning, because I'm sitting here looking at this shit, and I'm looking at people talking about, well, first of all, good guy with a gun. Well, yeah, there were 20 good guys with guns who stood in the hallway with their thumb in their ass, listening to this guy murder children and waiting for him to run out of ammo before they ran in to save the day. So fuck your good guy with a gun, because a good guy with a gun is never there. That's the first goddamn problem. Second of all, they keep saying it's mental health. Well, first of all, that's bullshit. But let's just say it was true. If it was mental health, why do you keep giving people with mental health problems guns? That doesn't make any goddamn sense. But the ultimate expression of that, of its mental health, is the fact that, and this is what I said on Twitter this morning, if you followed it not too long ago, is that literally what these people are saying is that it's not the responsibility of the government, of our elected leaders. It's not the responsibility of law enforcement. It's not even the responsibility of the citizenry to stop gun violence, but rather some unsolicited, unknown, random psychologist who should have seen this coming and then done something about it.
I just wanted to stop and say hello.
It doesn't get any goddamn dumber than this. The bottom line here is that if you want to, we've gone around and around and around on this, and as the cliche that you keep seeing online says, it's an Onion article that keeps going around of there's nothing that can be done, says the country where nothing is done. And literally every other country, and a perfect example is Australia with the Port Arthur massacre. When that happened, within a week, their legislature met and they goddamn did something, and it changed gun violence in that entire country. It's time. I'm not saying that's our solution here, but it's a damn good example. It's a good starting place.
I have nothing to add to that. I have nothing to add to that. And it's like, and I've written a couple essays on Facebook about, I think if we go to the extremes, we're missing what's true in the middle, is that everybody wants this to stop. And there are things we can do to stop it. And I posted a list of things we can do. Make a gun use. I haven't written this one up recently yet. But we make, and any crime, any use of the gun that is a crime is a federal crime. And you go to prison. And when that was in that criminal, didn't want to get caught with guns. They knew prison was going to do it. The violence went down. You go after the table gun sellers. Well, a lot of them went out of business when we went out and table gun sellers, and the gun show loopholes. We go after that because that's where we're leaking guns into the hands of criminals. And then we could require liability insurance on gun owners. And I mean, I would pay that. I would pay the liability insurance, no question. And then if the insurance company said, you got to have a gun safe and you got to do this and you got to do that, and if you don't do it, your rates go up. You better believe I would be responsible that way. If I were a responsible gun owner, if I were a gun owner, I'd be a responsible gun owner. I would make every fucking effort to make sure that my guns were safe, and I would want the laws in place to make sure that every responsible gun owner keeps it. So those who are irresponsible, we have the tools to stop them and prevent. I don't know the assault weapon ban. It worked. It worked. There are things we can do. We're not doing them, and it's been the Republican members of Congress. They've stalled everything because the NRA and the lobbyists from the gun manufacturers, any regulation at all. We can't even have a study on gun violence because that gets blocked. The CDC isn't allowed to study or collate the data on gun violence. So we can't even, I mean, as if we need more evidence. Sandy Hook and Parkland and now this one in Texas, they're all of a pattern. They're all of a pattern. And it was just pointed out to me by Glenn Howman, the shooter in Texas bought his guns when he turned 18. Where did he get the money? He didn't. He bought them on a finance plan. So technically the company still owns the guns until they're paid off. Now, if I was a parent in Uvalde, I know who I'd be suing for millions of dollars. And that's 19 potential $1 million lawsuits. We could put that fucker out of business.
Right. But again, there's all kinds of things that can be done. but you have to do something. Yeah, you have to take some action. The other side of this is this. It doesn't do you. Again, Chicago's held up as the poster child of gun violence, and yet, to say that kind of stuff is disingenuous. You can ban
Because
guns
the
in
guns are leaking
Washington.
across from Indiana. The guns are coming
Sure.
in
It
from
doesn't do you a
Indiana.
damn bit of good. You need. It's just like everything else. You need a federal law. You need federal gun laws. Allowing the states to manage this is a disaster. And again, now people are going to be instantly angry about that. But the right to keep and bear arms is a federal right. It's a constitutional right, not a state right anyway. And so allowing states to manage this obviously doesn't work. It hasn't worked. It's never worked, and it's getting worse. And again, Texas is a perfect example. My God, the NRA spends more money by a factor of 2 in Texas than anywhere else. And you have constant gun violence. You have a governor that's in the pocket of the National Rifle Association. And it's not just the National Rifle Association. I mean, they're the obvious villain, but they're not the only one that's the problem here. And again, you look at stuff, and you look at again. This is something I said this morning. Was there's 74 million children in this country, 17 and below, and there's only about 2 to 3 million, depending on which paper you believe, NRA members. It seems to me that if we could get the kids together to form an association, and they all donated $1 of their lunch money, we could buy Mitt Romney and buy him away from the National Rifle Association. But it's not. Again, half these people. I don't even know that half these people believe the horse shit that they say. I think the guys on the ground do. And I know, I live in the middle of Gun Central. This morning out here, they were blazing away like they do every morning. My local gun store down here, Second Amendment headquarters. The parking lot's overflowing. There isn't even a parking spot in there because every time there's a shooting, they're right down there buying guns and ammunition. In fact, I drove past there yesterday, and they've got big pallets of ammo piled up in the parking lot, and they got a guy out there at the desk, and they're selling ammunition wholesale because they're afraid Joe Biden's coming to get their goddamn guns.
Yeah, it's just like Clinton did, and Obama. Clinton and Obama took away all their guns, and they had to buy new ones. Yeah, right.
Mass shootings are goddamn profitable for capitalism in this country. Every time there's a mass shooting, man, that's the time to buy stock in fucking gun companies and ammunition manufacturers because, like I said, the parking lot's full. They're right down here. They're buying pallets of ammunition. Again, these are people that I live in a very impoverished part of the country, and these people have money for guns and ammo and cigarettes or dental.
Well, I think we lost Jim for just a second.
And you have to ask yourself, which one would my back? Am I here?
Yes.
All right. Well, sure. I might be my local ISP is run by hardcore MAGAs. So if they're monitoring this feed, I may lose connectivity again. No, it's we've had a week of torrential rain, and you'd think that people that live in this climate would harden their infrastructure, but again, we have money for guns. We don't have money for waterproofing fiber optic cables or whatever the hell the fucking problem is. So anyway, here we are. Again, these people are down here buying pallets of ammunition. They have a choice between dental insurance for their children or buying pallets of ammunition and guns and cigarettes. And if you ask yourself which one is liable to improve the quality of life of the next generation, health insurance or guns, these people, there isn't even any question there. It's guns. Guns are the answer to everything. And that's where their money goes. And it's this mentality down here, and it's not just here. It's all over the goddamn country now. But it's very prevalent in where I live. I live right in the buckle of the Bible Belt, and I rode 30 miles yesterday morning when the sun came up. I get out there before it gets too hot, and I ride the bike. And I rode 30 miles yesterday, and I passed, I can't tell you, I stopped counting at 20 of God, guns, and Trump flags. I don't know how many Confederate flags I saw. And there's a guy that I assume is a cop because he's got a cruiser in the driveway. He's got a Confederate flag. He's got a Trump flag. And he's got a flag hanging on his fence that says Trump and JFK Jr. 2024. These are not people that you can reason with, man. Reason doesn't work with these folks. You can't talk them around with logic. You're off, David. I can see your mouth moving, but I can't hear you.
Yeah, there we go. These people have lost touch with reality. They've lost touch with reality. And this is not a recent phenomenon. This started when Ronald Reagan didn't allow the fair use policy to continue. They discontinued the equal time rule. That's what I was trying to remember.
Right.
And that was deliberate. And that allowed the conservatives to buy up and own the television stations and the radio stations. And they challenged the license of every station that came up for renewal. And that's why those stations became conservative talk shows. So they, with the result was limbo. And they have spent 40 years changing the national conversation. So those poor people who never get 20 miles away from where they were born have no knowledge of the rest of the world is like. They have no knowledge of what it's like to live in a big city. They have knowledge of what Paris is, or London, or Hong Kong, or Sydney, Australia. They have no knowledge that people are interesting and wonderful, even people who are not like them. And they're terrified of anything different or strange or unknown, and they have to have their guns to protect themselves from all those boogeymen who are lurking under their beds and the monsters in the closets. They're terrified. That's what's really going on, is a national cowardice.
Right. Well, there's a absolutely, I 100% agree with you. And I see that very much here where I talk to people and I say, they'll tell me all those goddamn people out in California. I said, have you ever been to California? You say those people, like everybody, California is bigger than every other state in the union except for Texas and Alaska. And there's more people there than anywhere else damn near in the world. There are multiple major cities. There's an entire eastern seaboard. The people in Northern California are not the same as the people in Southern California. There's people there from all over the world. So when you say the people in California, the fuck are you talking about? What people? Have you ever been there? And the answer I get here is, I don't need to go there. I don't need to go there because I know what it's like, and I don't have to go. The same thing. I had a woman here just tell me how terrible Canada was. Just terrible. It's horrible. It's a socialist country. People live in poverty. It's oppressive. The government tells you what to do. You can't even choose what doctor you want to see. I'm like, have you ever been to fucking Canada? Because Canada's freaking awesome. And again, Canada's not monolithic either. I mean, there's a big difference between, Toronto and, Regina, Saskatchewan. But even in the most conservative portions of Alberta, it's still pretty great, Canada. And I'm like, where do you get your information from? I mean, you have never been there. I don't need to go there. I know. My preacher, in fact, what she told me is my preacher told me. And preacher is a man of God. He doesn't lie. Like, well, has your preacher ever been to Canada? Because I don't think, and again, I mean, I know people here that have not been 20 miles from where they were born. They tell me how terrible Europe is all the time. I'm like, I lived in Europe for a decade, man. What the hell are you talking about? Europe is freaking, I wish the hell I was sitting in southern Spain right now drinking a goddamn cafe con leche at an outdoor cafe. What the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, Paris. Yeah, I mean, I've heard all these horrible stories about Paris. I have never been anywhere. I have had so much fun, enjoyed it so much. As Paris, you sit in a cafe, you have a little cafe a latte, you have a little crepes, you have this, you have that, you have pommes frites, and the people are friendly. They're knowledgeable, they're intelligent, and they're worldly. They aren't. And Italy, oh my God, the people in Italy are so friendly and the food is so good. Dinner is a 4-hour event, and you sit and you have a great time. You talk, and you don't have stupid conversations.
Well, the
All
only
of
problem
and
with Italy is you go to Italy and you can't drink coffee anywhere else again. I had to buy the first big sale that I made as a writer. I had to spend a couple grand on an Italian-made automatic espresso machine because once you drink Italian coffee, you can't drink anything else because it all tastes like
absolutely
dirt.
Turkish coffee too.
Oh yeah, turkey.
I've been all over the world, and I got to tell you, I have never. I feel more unsafe in some places in America, listening to the cowardice of people who should know better. You know, this whole idea of American exceptionalism is dead. It's dead. We have, as a nation, we have failed to live up to our own standards, and they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear
When you
that living up to our own standards requires a level of work, not just as a nation, but in our own hearts.
when you have 20 children routinely slaughtered in their school, you ain't exceptional. It's as simple as that.
Let
You
me
want to
get
be
personal.
exceptional? What's that?
Let me get personal here. You know, I'm a parent. I have a son, and he has a son. And I'm watching my little grandson grow up right now in a very safe environment. All of us are, but we, as you know, as granddad and dad, Sean and I have had talks. Maybe we should talk about homeschooling, Aiden. We're definitely talking about moving away from a very dense populated area to a place that is much, much less populated, partly because we don't like the density, we don't like the traffic, we don't like dealing with rude and thoughtless people anymore. We cannot fix America, and we have reached a point where is a safe place for us to go. That is the damage that has been done to this nation by those who have been profiting from polarizing us and dividing us. And it's old versus young, it's white versus black, it's native versus immigrant, it's this versus that. Wherever they can find a place to divide us, I see those conversations being put into social media. It's like, what the fuck are they talking about? Whatever happened to America, the melting pot, or even a tossed salad? Whatever happened to we're all in this together? We haven't been united as a nation since about 3 days after 9/11, and that lasted a week.
Right. Yeah. And again, I often think back to that moment, the day after 9/11, when Congress stood on the steps of the Capitol building and promised America put aside their partisan differences and work together. And I don't think that promise lasted long enough for them to turn around, walk back up those stairs and through the front doors of the Capitol building. But I don't think it lasted even that long. It sure as hell didn't last past, the end of that month.
It was performance art. I am tired of politics as
Well, and
performance.
again,
Come on. I grew up. Dwight D. Eisenhower was president. And what did he give us? He ended the Korean War. He balanced 4 budgets out of 8. He established the beginnings of the interstate highway system. He invested in space. All right, not as well as he should have, the missiles were exploding on the launch. The Vanguards were exploding on the launch pad. But Eisenhower was the last great Republican president because he was focused on the needs of the nation as best as he could. He was terrible on civil rights. We had JFK. JFK said we can do better. We can do better. What a great approach. He made mistakes, but he never lost sight of we have to do what's better. And as a nation, we've lost that. JFK's assassination, I think we all lost hope, and it took us, and we never recovered.
Again, you see a real shift between what you're talking about and where we are now. With you don't hear politicians talking about, especially mainstream politicians, when they're in the news all the time, talking about how we can do better. We're good enough. We're the best. We don't need to improve. Everybody is jealous of us. We're the best. They all want to come here. We need to build a wall and keep them out because we're as good. We can't get any better. We're as good as we'll ever be. And they're not talking about building a better future for the next generation, for improving things. In fact, they sneer at that. All these kids nowadays, they had it so good, they don't know what it's like. Well, fuck yeah, of course. What the hell are you talking about? That's the whole idea. I want my son to have it better than I did. And I didn't have a terrible life growing up. My parents did pretty great by us. but again, there were things that we weren't on. We were not on the high end of the economic ladder. We were on the lower end of it. My parents were great parents, so they did a great job of what they had, and as a result, I've done better than they did. And my goal, my wife and I, our whole lives is to build a better future for our son. I don't want him to have to.
Yeah,
I was in my
same thing.
I was in my.
Same thing.
I had to join the military. I had to join
Let me
the
say,
military.
my parents
and I
had to
work-
climb. Yeah, my parents had to climb the ladder out of Depression era poverty, and
Right.
and my sister was the first one in the family to go to college. I was the first one in the family to complete college, and yeah, and I want my kid to have a better life. My parents wanted me to have a better life than they had. I want my kid to have a better life. My
Right.
son is absolutely, and my son had a traumatic time in foster care. His commitment, possible, absolutely. I mean, when he talks about nobody will ever be able to do to Aiden what they did to me, I mean, he gets ferocious. And I say, and I have joked with him. I said, no, let me shoot them. Aiden needs a dad more than a grandpa.
Right.
So
Again, like
yeah,
I said,
I mean, that's the ferocity over here.
right. I joined the military to get the hell out of the Midwest, and again, where I grew up wasn't terrible. It was the Midwest. I grew up in southwestern Michigan, and it was a good place. But again, I grew up a decade after you did, and I grew up in the '70s, and at the end of that malaise, that 10 years after Vietnam, and so where I grew up, you either milk cows or you made cars, and I didn't want to do either one of them. I wanted to see something else, and I wanted to meet people that were different than I was, and so I joined the military, and it took me. And I wasn't any great student. I was mediocre in high school, and I didn't have a whole hell of a lot. I took a couple classes at junior college and everything, and it wasn't until I'd been in the military for 10 years before I realized that I wanted a college degree and that I wanted more than most of the people that I grew up with who stayed in the same place, who did the same job their dads did. I know guys today that are the third or fourth generation in the same factory on the same machine, and that's okay for them, but it wasn't enough for me. And so, and I did. I went off and I parlayed my military background and that kind of stuff into a couple of degrees and education. And my wife did the same thing. My wife grew up fairly impoverished and worked her way up to an MBA, and we paid for every penny of that stuff. And today, people come to me and they say, my wife and I both have graduate degrees, and we paid a shitload of money for that and spent a lot of time doing it. And people ask me, how do you feel about this conversation about paying off student loans and stuff? Look, man, even on a military salary and busting my ass every day and getting the breaks that I got, it still costs us a fortune to pay off those degrees. Nowadays, I know people that have master's degrees that they will never pay off. I mean, my goddamn, the degree costs them more than a house does. And there's no way. The cost of education, the cost of making the next generation better has become so high that people don't want to do it. And couple that to the attitude, especially like where I live, where it's literally a sin, where they literally preach this from the pulpits that you shouldn't want it better than your parents had. You shouldn't want it. You're spoiling your children if you give them a better life than you had. If you suffered, they should suffer. And you don't want the next generation to do any better, to get above themselves, to get beyond their station. And that, people, the arrogance, I'll tell you that. And the funny part about that is the people that are pushing that message are the people that are way above your station. This morning, I'm watching Ted Cruz talking about the elites. Ted Cruz, this guy's an Ivy League educated lawyer who has spent his entire life in government, living in a gated community, who sends his kids to fucking Cancun in the middle of a snowstorm because he can afford to. And he's talking about the elites. Dude, look in the mirror. Because I will tell you, every single goddamn person that I hear talking about the elites is the elite. I mean, there is nothing more ironic than Elon fucking Musk, the richest man in the world, on Twitter right now, railing about the elites. I'm like, dude, you got 6 fucking mansions that you were in. And he was talking about how he was so bored during the COVID lockdown. It was so terrible. Oh, yeah, it must have been horrible to be locked up in your fucking mansion for a year and a half. Jesus Christ, man. God damn. Could you not afford a PlayStation or a TV set? Jesus, man. But everybody that I see talking about this is the very people that they're talking about. And the worst part about it is that I live amongst people who don't have a pot to piss in, who live in a rundown house trailer, a yard full of crap and dog shit. Their kids don't have any future. Some of these people, I know people that have worked in the same factory here in this panhandle of Florida for 20 years, right? 20 years, the same job in some plastics factory, breathing this crap and this garbage to make $17.50 an hour with absolute shit benefits. After 17, you could make that fucking Walmart, for crying out loud. I have a pot to piss in, and they're right there watching that television, watching Ted Cruz talking about the elites, and they're like, that's right, them damned elites. Are you the guy that you voted for lives in a tower with his name on the side of it in gold letters, 30 foot tall, and shits in a golden toilet that came from Saddam Hussein's palace, and you're talking about the elites. The fuck is the matter with you, man? I don't know.
You know, Heinlein wrote a book called Rule 2100. And
yeah.
about 2/3 of the way through, the hero is in a secret place somewhere in New Mexico where the subversives who are trying to overthrow this theocratic tyranny, one of the things they do is they publish a magazine that brags about the luxury that the prophet lives in. So why are you publishing this? It's because this magazine gets distributed to the poor, and the goal is to make them resentful. Well, we have this situation today where we have Fox News and Ted Cruz and the former guy, and we see the wealth they're living in, and it's available for everybody to see, including the poorest people in the world. And is it making them resentful? Yeah, but not of the people they need to be resentful of, because the former guy and Ted Cruz are saying, those over there, they're the people you should resent. Meanwhile, I'm shitting on a golden toilet.
Right. So I said, this guy
it's not working. Hein missed that one.
Toilet, top of a 30-foot tower. And people were like, oh, yeah.
Hein missed that one. The poor are not resentful of the people they need to resent. Now, the interesting thing is, let me add this. Right now, the disparity between the haves and the have-nots in this country, between the wealthy and the poor, is worse than the disparity that existed in France in 1789 before the French broke out. This is not news to anybody who's been paying attention, but the people who are living at the top of the heap, the top of the pyramid, they probably know, and they're working their butts off to make sure that the rest of us don't figure it out.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, we'd have pulled them off their golden toilets a long time ago.
Oh yeah, America's got, again, there's this common, the common phrase in the United States is that every American thinks they're temporarily inconvenienced millionaires, and there's a great deal of truth to that. And I'm looking at, and I see people here talking. I'm actually watching the chat, scroll across the bottom of the screen, and I see Ellen Chillen his comment about, people are resentful that they paid on their college loans for 20 years, and now we're talking about paying off this current generation. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some truth to that. Don't get me wrong here. I don't think that. Since we brought that up, let me just say, as a follow-up, I don't know that paying off everybody's college loan is actually the answer. The real answer, of course, is to make college affordable for everybody. I mean, it used to be. I mean, again, my wife and I worked our way through college. Same as a lot of other people. I wasn't a good enough student back in those days to get any scholarship money. I joined the military, and the military paid part of my paid part of my college, but once you get to a certain level, a certain number of years, the GI Bill stops paying for that. It comes out of your pocket. And so we paid for 2 graduate degrees out of our pocket, my wife and I. It took a long time to pay that off. But it was possible for me. And it's not possible for a lot of people nowadays because higher education is really out of reach without those loans. And I don't even know that paying off the loan, like I said, I am at the point in the default position now of, we need to pay off some of this debt so some of these people can get out from underneath it and become productive members of civilization. But I don't think that's actually really the real answer. The real answer, of course, is to make education affordable to anyone who wants it. And I don't care if they're 20 years old or 90 years old. Higher education should not be not even higher education itself should not be the purview of those who can afford it, because that gap does nothing but get wider and wider and wider until there's one class of civilization that's running everything that can access that, and then there's the rest of us that are all down at the bottom, shoveling sewage, and so the system itself is broken. And paying off college loans, the government paying off college loans, that's a stopgap measure at best, and it doesn't end.
Jim, you're not going far enough.
Go ahead.
Education has to be free education. And you know why? Because education is considered a right, not a privilege. Education has to be considered necessary to the welfare of the nation. And unless we make it free to everyone, we're making it a privilege. And if we make it a privilege, then we're not recognizing the rights of every American to have. Basically, we need to recognize that as a society, healthcare and education be considered part of the necessity of life.
Right, and it's funny you mentioned that, because that's exactly what I was sitting here thinking. I was thinking, I agree with every word that you're saying, and I want to add healthcare to that as well, which I think should also be a right. You can't advance as a civilization, and I'm not even talking about just a nation, but as a civilization. We live in a high-tech civilization. The technology and the level of knowledge required to operate on an equitable basis in this society increases every day. And you can see that illustrated within your own families as people that are older lose touch with the ability to interact with civilization because they can't access or understand the technology. And you're seeing that. You see people that if you don't have Facebook, if you don't have Twitter, as horrible as those platforms are, if you don't have some form of social media, you're missing out on a lot of things that are happening in civilization nowadays, for good and for bad. Civilization and technology has both benefit and bane. It always has. I mean, cars get you around, but they also pollute the environment. They kill people. But we can't live without them. And again, technology is the same way. And you see that. You used to see that with an older generation that lost its ability to drive. You get to a point where you're not allowed to drive anymore. And if you don't have somebody to drive you around, you become isolated from civilization. But you're also seeing that with those folks nowadays that can access technology, social media technology, to interact with the larger world. And because a lot of things have moved on to that. It's a hell of a lot easier to have a Facebook page than it is a website. And I say that as somebody who manages both and has for many, many years. And people who simply just don't understand how things work. I mean, I'm on these platforms probably more than any 10 people that combined. And I see every day that people that simply cannot manage social media. And of course, there's a large component of social media that is deliberately trying to make you not understand things. But again, that is you see, and I simply use folks of the older generation as an example of a much larger narrative. And that larger narrative is that our civilization becomes more complicated all the time, every day. We used to call it future shock. If you read Alvin Toffler and all that kind of stuff, and frankly, I don't think Alvin went far enough. But the bottom line here is that we get.
when you're talking about the older generation, you're talking about me. I don't think of
Well,
myself as
not
the
that
older
far behind you
generation,
anymore, buddy.
but there's
Yeah, but
nobody
I mean, but
ahead of me. As like, oh, wait a
right.
minute, everybody I know who's older than me is dead, so that must is all
The
right.
thing about it is
But
that
yeah, you're
you're
right.
fairly
There are
exceptional.
things I don't keep up with anymore. I can't. I don't. It's like, and my son is showing me stuff, and I'm thinking I could probably invest the time and energy to understand this. But while I do, 10 other things are going to leap ahead, and I won't understand them either.
Right, but you're pretty
It's
exceptional. You're pretty exceptional, David. Though I mean, you were a science fiction writer. You're used to looking at the future. It's catching up to you, not the other way around. And I don't say that. I don't say that to flatter you. I'm saying that is a statement of fact. Is that you're fairly exceptional as far as the ability to use technology to interface to remain connected and aware. Um, I know
yeah.
a lot of folks that are my age. And
Wait. I'm on my laptop, but to make it work, I have a power pack that is top. But because I'm in a hotel, I'm using my phone to tether the
right,
internet connection because I don't like the hotel. So here I am with everything interconnected, and it's like, and I'm looking at, okay, this is how the future works. In order to have a video conference with you and Bob,
right.
but it's only possible because tethering and powering and connecting and the laptop have all synergistically combined that I don't have to sweat it. I know I can do it. Back in the days when before we had all these pieces and we were inventing them to make anything work, you really had to be a computer nerd. I remember because I was there because I built my
And
first
you were
7
that guy.
computers. I was that guy, yeah.
You were that guy, man. I remember conversations with you on CompuServe back in the day. You were that nerd. And
No,
but
I used to
the thing
beta
is,
test software because I would break
right,
it trying to make it do what I needed it to do.
right. But on the other hand, you wrote stories long before any of this technology existed about this very thing. And so for you and people like you, the technology's finally caught up to the things that you visualized 40 or 50 years ago. I'll be generous. Let's say 30 or 40 years ago. You right. So this is the stuff that you visualized all along. And again, here's the thing. I look at, I have mixed feelings about Orson Scott Card, but in his original story, Ender's Game, one of the core portions of the back of that were two young children in their teens who were using social media, which did not exist at the time that book was written, to manipulate world opinion. And literally, here we are with those very things happening. I literally can see teenagers in foreign countries directly manipulating politicians who are making decisions in policy in the United States of America right now.
Card, I have to tell
You
you,
know,
Card is brilliant. I mean, I find some of
yeah,
the things he said to be contemptible, but
yeah,
Ender's Game, he
yeah,
predicted virtual entertainment. That whole long thing about the giant,
yeah.
it's like, and at the time I thought, wow, that's mind-boggling. Now it's mundane, but at the time it was a breakthrough in thinking, and it was only possible because he had spent years working for a game
Right,
company, a video game
right,
company. Um, so yeah, what happens when you're in that situation, I'm aware of what you want the next step or what you think the next step will be or what you want it to be, and you start writing the way you want things to work out. And that's where a lot of science fiction has come from. A lot of the science fiction of the late 40s and the 50s came from people who had been working in the military in during World War II. Heinlein, Asimov, Elsbreg de Camp, a few others.
oh, yeah, it's like a
And they
whole list of. I was reading bios of science fiction writers, and every one of them were guys that were either directly involved in uniform or were involved in research and development in support of the war effort. Yeah. The one that always gets me is I forgot Miller, Walter Miller, the guy that was involved in the guy that wrote Canticle for Leibowitz, who was involved in the raids on Monte Cassino and the Abbey there, which led directly to those stories of, the Canticle for Leibowitz. I mean, it led directly to that, and also led to his suicide years later from PTSD.
Cleve Cartmill wrote a story about the atomic bomb, which was published in the 1943 Astounding, was it? And the FBI came to John W. Campbell and they said, "You got to pull this issue right now." And Campbell said, "If you do, you will alert the Germans that there's something in it that they need to know about, and you don't want to do that, and you just want to think this is just Pulp Fiction." And because you're never going to pull all of the issues that have already been mailed out anyway. And the FBI said, all right. So Cleve Cartmill wrote a story about that later on after the atomic bomb was no longer. So when I can write a story about the space station.
Right.
He wrote a story, his experience, why he couldn't publish about the atomic bomb story he wrote. When can I write about the space station?
Right.
Which was a great, I wish, it was like, oh man, I wish that was a true story. But yeah, these guys were right there in the thick of it because they were interested in the future from the very beginning. Pohl and Kornbluth and Walheim weren't allowed in the first World Science Fiction Convention by Sam Moskowitz because he thought they were communists. The Automat. They were 17 years old. They had their own World Con. Yeah. It's like, but this is where this whole science fiction genre began. It began with nerds who were excited about the possibilities of technology, and the next step beyond that. Yeah, but the next step beyond that is the technology of consciousness, and you find these people that when they explored technology, they had to explore who are we going to be with this technology.
Right. That was the thing that I always enjoyed about John Varley's work, was that Varley would write about technology, but then he would spend all of his time talking about how that technology shaped civilization. He long before it was normal to talk about trans people, Varley talked about easy sex changes, and where sex changing was complete and total, and it was random and routine, and you get it done in an afternoon as an optional thing, and you could change back and forth whenever you like. And he never talked about how that worked. What he talked about was how that would change society. And those are fascinating studies. But again, that's the other side of it too. Is science fiction is like anything else. You get out of it what you put into it. I mean, you could spend all.
Let me share a story with you. I so admired John Varley for a lot of things, and the way he made the sex changes such a casual part of the stories he was writing about. He got a lot of good praise for that. So, without making a big thing out of it, I included that in Hella. That Kyle and his that it was routine. And if you go to Amazon and read the reviews, most of the reviews are positive, but some reviewer who gave it a 2-star review said, well, welcome to the woke world where people can change sex whenever they want. It's like, and he went on at some length about it's a communist society. It says, at the bottom it says, well, it's brilliantly written, but it's wrong. And it's like, dude, did you miss the whole point of the book? I was just looking at the reviews this morning.
It's funny. Not to speaking of things that were written years ago. I could obviously tell you're sitting at the table in the dealer's room because I can hear the tribbles trilling underneath your microphone right now.
Yeah, I'm going to mute myself while you talk. So,
I love it. No, man, I love it. It cracks me up because I'm sitting here talking to David Gerrold online, and there are tribbles in the soundtrack. It's so great. That's awesome.
Can you hear it purring?
If you guys ever go to a con and you meet David, you'll see that his table is covered with tribbles. They're all. It's just like that show, man. They're crawling around and they're making noise, and it's great, and it's worth going just to see David do that. But again, like I said, science fiction is
it's the curse of my life. It's the curse of my life. I shall be ever. Somebody asked me, "What do you think your legacy will be you know, what do you think your obituary will be? So we already know what my obituary will be. It's the third or fourth paragraph down that I'm working on.
Right. You're talking about Varley. As a matter of fact, there are two people that when I started writing, I got notes from two different people, and I wasn't sure I was any good at it or not. And one of them was you. I'd written something, and you wrote me a long letter, and you and I started talking after that, and here we are years later, friends. And the other one was John Varley, who wrote me. I referenced something that he'd written in a long blog post. It was actually, it was that horrible tragedy where the woman was on life support and she was going to have to be, her husband had made a decision to have her unplugged. She'd been brain dead for years, and her family fought him. And there was this huge battle about whether or not we should unplug people. And it reminded me of a story that Varley had written, a very disturbing story about a woman that had been kept alive by automated machinery for decades, and she'd been dead, but the machines didn't know that. And so I used that as an example, and John Varley's sister read it, and she tagged him on it, and he read it, and he wrote me a very long letter, a very personal letter. It was just, I doubt he probably doesn't even remember, because he reads 1,000 things and he writes to a lot of people, but John wrote me a very kind and amazing and encouraging letter. And I, you know, like you, it made me think I could actually do this. And here we are a decade later. So anyway, but there it is. There's the nanny state weighing in to tell us we're out of time.
Oh, dang, Jim. I'm not going to tell you guys you're out of time until
David's got to get back. David's got to get back to the dealer room. And so
he never left the dealer's room. You figure out how much money's worth of commerce he added to the gross domestic product during this show.
We're living in the future.
No,
Here's David talking.
We don't sell much if I can't talk to the people. They come up to the table. They want to meet the thing later. And he's not. I have to stand in. So, I absolutely refuse to fall trap to the expecting to be treated like a hero, because I've seen what had happened to other people where they get so used to the perks of fame that they begin to think that's the way the world should be. And then when somebody says, "No, do you know who I am?" Yeah, who cares? I don't want to be that guy. We have enough that guys in the world. I would have more fun just finding out who people are, talking to them, finding out they like something I read. That's cool. That's all I need from the conventions. I don't need more.
Well,
anything more that I get is gravy, and I'm grateful for it. And I really gave me this beautiful Heinlein Award, this medal, and I'm looking down at it.
Yeah, I was going to
show it, man. Thinking, come on.
Eat your heart out, King of England. I got Heinlein on my medal.
That's right. As I said, I mean, that's what you're doing in
King of
Baltimore
Sweden,
right now.
King of Sweden. Eat your heart out, King of Sweden. Yeah, I was thinking nobody.
How great is that, though? The thing is that you don't even give a shit what country he's king of. He doesn't have the Heinlein Award.
That's and the thing, and I posted the video of my acceptance speech, and here's the joke. I'm driving cross country and I'm thinking, and I'm rehearsing different acceptance speeches. No, that's no go better. Right. And I get there and my head goes blank. I don't know what to say. And I'm sitting there and they start introducing, it starts hitting me. This is important. And I say, I don't know who the hell this David Gerrold guy is. I'm still that 9-year-old who discovered his first Heinlein book. And I spent 69 years wondering what the fuck just happened. And which I really where I am today, I am so grateful that I have so many good friends like you and Bob, or like you and Jim, like Jim and Bob, the Jim and Bob show with David. I'm just so, it's like, I just have so much fun. I don't want to spoil it.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question then, Jim or David? Let me.
I'm sorry. I have a specific request on the signature.
Hang on a minute. I got to talk to a customer. Hang on. You guys say goodbye.
Help the gross domestic product.
That's right.
It would be the CDP, which is
I'd
a
like
gross
to ask
domestic
you
product.
to sign it to my brother.
So, Jim,
well, if you guys haven't been to a con, he was sitting in the dealer's room, which is a big open space full of writers and artists, and singers and amazingly creative people, publishers, and all kind of people, and they're selling books and they're selling artwork and they're talking to their fans. And
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I overheard
never sat in a dealer's room. It's a pretty amazing place, and it's a lot of fun. Even in a small con, it's a great place. But it's always a great reason why you should get to a convention, because you get to speak to the people who create the stuff that you enjoy. And you talk to David, and you're talking to decades of history. David knows everybody. He's been in this industry. He taught it at Pepperdine. He knows everybody. And so if you stop by the dealer's table and you buy a Tribble or you buy a book, you're not just getting a book or a script or a screenplay. You're getting a story.
You're getting the dust of history.
That's right. That's right. But it's not just David. It's anybody. It's like I said, you go to these conventions, even a small convention, and you get to meet people that have created the things that you enjoy, the TV shows and the books and the stories and the artwork and the songs, and that's worth the price of admission all by itself. We're all going to be at Chicago at the World Science Fiction Convention later on this year. By all means, guys that are watching, stop in, buy a ticket, come on by. Chicago's in the middle of the country. It'd be worth your time.
And I'll have a dealer's table there. So
if you come to my table, you don't have to buy anything. Just say hi. Really. I love to sell the books because it pays for writing more stories, because I love the writing. But you don't have to buy you can buy a book. I won't stop you. Come say hi. With Bob, you have to buy a book.
Right. And you have to, because I'm in Bob's book. So I'll be sitting at Bob's table. So you need to come and buy books, because my bank likes money, and my mortgage company likes money. So please buy the book.
David, you're in the Bob books too. So
yes, I am. Yes, I am. So yes.
Yeah. You are.
Maybe we'll even have a couple more here soon. So we'll see.
But David, I have a question for you. I've been trying to get at it all day.
Okay.
Tell us about 3 new things.
3 new things. Okay.
I saw something on your website or your Facebook feed.
I don't remember.
It said 3 new things by David Gerrold.
Oh, right. There's hand me.
Just a book you wrote. Never mind.
Just a book, just an award, just a couple of things.
There's this one, and there's this one.
Go on your set, David. Go on your settings. That little gear box right down there, and unmirror. Or there's a mirror.
Yeah.
I want
I'm looking
to be able to read those covers.
We're talking about old people and technology.
Sure. Hey, he used to be a geek.
I paid mine. I suffered for my art. Now it's your turn. Mirror camera there.
Oh, hell, do you guys remember what it was like trying to do this when I had to do it for myself for the first time?
I miss your producer every day.
Thanks. I'll tell Cheyenne that you said that.
There it is. There's the book. G is for Gerrold. Yep.
And then this one is called Home on Derange. Home on Derange. You see that?
Okay, these are the 3 new things.
The third one is an ebook on you go to my Facebook page, and there's an ebook called Sneak Peeks, and it has the last case of Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes has been murdered, and Watson has to solve the case. And I was lucky. Patricia Elrod is a great Holmes fan and a great editor, and she gave me some marvelous suggestions. We wrote the ending of the story, and much better mystery and ways to solve it. And the two of us have been spending the last 2 weeks sending messages. My internal editor won't shut up, and so I've been tweaking the story. Continue to have one more tweak that I still want to apply, but. It's a very small one. So the story and 3 unpublished stories are available in my Facebook page, Sneak Peeks, only about 3 or 4 days more before I just take it down. So it's just a very limited time offer. So anyway, yeah. Thanks for giving me the chance to message it, but to mention it. Now, after this, I'm going down to Florida for a couple of days to annoy Jim Wright. Jim Wright wrote 8 chapters, the most brilliant beginning I've ever read to any novel in the past decade or two. And he hooked me, and I keep been bugging him. Where's the rest of the goddamn book? Now, I get the irony. Don't go after me. But
I wasn't going to say nothing, man. I wasn't going to say anything.
Yeah. Don't go there.
Well,
Anyway, so I'm going to go down. Jim and I are
years.
going to hang out for a couple of days, and we'll have critical mass, and we're going to hammer out the outline of that book, and we're going to get it finished because it deserves to be finished. I want to find... it's selfish on my part. I want to find out what happens next. I want to find out where this hero is going.
It's amazing. You know, again, you had a tremendous amount of influence on how I write, and I say that without any modesty. I think I've quoted you a couple of times the different things that you've written, especially Under the Eye of God. I mean, that was almost poetic the way those stories were written. And
I'll tell you a secret about them. The reason those books, they were hard to write. There is not one single use of the verb to be in any of its forms in either of them, except there might be one where I made a mistake, but I was going through with the word processor doing a search, and that's forced me to rewrite every sentence and find a different way of saying every single thing in the book. And so it created a different way of speaking.
Well, right, and again, you know, I read through that stuff. I swear to God, man, you know, and it sounded like all I did was read David Gerrold. I read everybody else too, but there are things that stick in my mind. I was just thinking of this the other day. I was actually in fixing breakfast, and I was thinking the other day. You said long ago there was the David Gerrold method of making perfect bacon: cook bacon naked. Remember that? Yeah. Right, exactly. And every time I'm making bacon for the last 40 years, I'm in the kitchen cooking bacon. All I can think of is cook bacon naked, because
you have it backwards. It's don't cook bacon naked. Actually, no. If you can cook bacon naked, you're a master. That's the point.
Right. Because you keep temperature down. That's how you keep from burning it. Right, exactly. But again, those kind of the ways that you wrote that stuff influenced directly how I wrote those first 8 chapters of that novel and how the words fit together. And that influences, of course, the story. And it also influences how I write some of the other stuff that I write. And for the folks that are watching, this whole thing came together because I wrote those chapters, and then some things happened in my life that caused me to put that on hold. I moved from Alaska to Florida. We had to take care of family members, and you can see David nodding his head because there's a very similar story going on over on that side of the screen, and which I'll just politely not mention. And somebody actually just said something about, at least you're not going the George R. Martin, and I got to laugh because anyway, George ain't got nothing on David. But anyway,
George and I have teased each other a little bit about when's the next book coming.
David and I were talking. I asked him to read those chapters, and he liked them, and we went back and forth on it. And over a period of going back and forth on it, while I'm trying to restart writing that, I finally realized that the perfect guy to help me finish that son of a bitch, it's right here on the screen with you. And so that's what we're going to do. My guest room's ready for him. He's going to be down here next week, and we're going to see if we can get this done. So,
well, I'm going to butt in and say, hey, if we've done polls while you guys are talking, said, should we tell them we're out of time? And the answer is always no. Let them go. Wonderful.
But see, that makes me worry about the audience. What's wrong with you people?
Hey, what's wrong with those people is they got 2 of the most brilliant minds in science fiction and politics.
Again, I don't know if that says anything about us. I think that's more of an insult to the other minds floating around.
Well, you know, the most brilliant mind in politics, it's not exactly a high bar.
It's not. And I think that it's funny you should mention that, because somebody was just telling me the other day, it's just amazing. It's amazing how often you've been right about this. It's not amazing. You're not paying attention. I'm not predicting the future. I'm only telling you what these people said themselves that they were going to do. You're not paying attention. Anyway.
Okay, what I was going to tell you people is this has been last Sunday where Jim and David come on. And you may have noticed that I can just vanish off the screen because these guys are so freaking good at it. But next week, we got somebody that's just as exciting, Brenda Clough. Now, I don't know if you remember Brenda.
Sure.
David, yeah. She is brilliant. We're happy to have her, and she's going to be here next Sunday, and it's going to be a fun time. And then then two out. There's one that I am excited about, so I'm going to pump it early. I ran into this sweet little old lady, and I know that's a terrible thing to say, but she was sitting next to me at a protest I was at, and we were chatting. And she told me that says in 1972, she went to get a library card. And they told her she couldn't have one without her husband's permission. We're going to do a show with women of a certain age who lived through that, where we're going to talk about all of the things that we take for granted today beyond basic women's health care, but all of the little things that, no, you can't have a library card. No, you can't get a credit card. No, you can't buy a car. No, you can't do this. You can't do that because you're a woman. And this happened. These women lived through the same, they're of the generational age of us and our mothers. No, we don't have to go back to grandmother to find it. This woman is, 1972 is not that long ago. So I'll look forward to having that show coming up pretty quick. But next week, Brenda Clough. Now, David, again, the Heinlein Award winner at the convention where you received the award. Congratulations. It is deserved, just flat deserved. And Jim, keep telling us about Florida. It never gets old.
Oh, it's sold. It's sold.
I hear you could move to Vermont. A good buddy of yours is looking at the neighborhood.
I hear that. And
Uh-oh. Barb Rowe, huh? I might have to talk to her. Hey, Barb, I'll check you out after the show. I'll send you a mail because I got room for one more person on that that show to round it out to all three. I know I'm not supposed to book guests on the show, but never let a good opportunity go to waste. So thank you, guys. Anything last to say, Dave?
Yeah, I want to say I apologize for the background noises. I'm at the convention. I have put my microphone on mute for when I'm not talking, but a couple of times I've needed to leave it on. I apologize to those who found it difficult. We'll do better. Thank you, everybody. I thank you all, everybody who checks in, who follows these. I love reading the chat that goes up the side of the screen. And Bob, thank you. Jim, thank you. These are, I wouldn't miss these sessions. These are,
right.
I learn something every week, and I get to rant a little bit too.
Right. Yell at the screen, so it's always great.
Yeah, it's like, well, it's traditional that the cranky old yells at the screen, so I'm glad of the opportunity to do it in a positive venue.
Oh, but
Yeah.
you had competition this week yelling at the screen.
Right.
Oh my God, yes. But nobody does it as good as Jim is my role model for how to yell at the screen.
Well, Professional trainer.
Just remember the one thing we started on. This is not a time for silence, guys.
I don't think you have to much worry about either David or myself not talking. So, but again, like I said, I'm at the point now with this stuff where I'm repeating myself because it's the same thing over and over and over again. We're going to have to do something different this time. And if we don't have leaders that have the courage to do that, well, then we need better leaders.
That's
it.
Simple as that.
All right.
Better leaders. Thank you, guys. And I'm gonna turn us off.
Before we go, because I'm gonna have to unplug here, but before we go, David, I'm gonna call you on the phone here.